Nicholas Witchell, 70 years old, has been the royal and diplomatic correspondent for the BBC for 25 years now. For every big news story that has involved the royal family for 25 years now, Nicholas Witchell has been there reporting on it. And now at age 70, he's finally ready to retire. As a way to honor him, Roy Anika for the Sunday Times has written an excellent article on Nicholas Witchell. This piece looks at his experience over the past 25 years as a royal correspondent, and he also shares his opinions on some royal family matters that we haven't necessarily heard before. Nika writes, now that he is retiring, having been bound by what he describes as the discipline of being a BBC reporter, where you can't go on the air and just say what you're thinking, he is finally allowing himself the freedom to speak his mind. And of course, we want to know, what does he really think of the royal traitors Harry and Meghan? Well, all right. He says, quote, you cannot ignore Harry and Meghan and that story, however tedious at times it may become. We've fully reported the split, the biography, and all the other machinations of it. There have been soap opera aspects to the royal family for a long time, and an appetite for the tittle-tattle, scandal end of reporting. It's not an aspect I feel at home with, but I recognize it is part of the job. Oh, he is right that wherever Harry and Meghan go, the drama follows. But that's not the only drama that has been stirred up in the royal family over the years. Interestingly enough, it was Witchell who was there when King Charles made that statement that he thought wasn't on camera. These bloody people, I can't bear that man. I mean, he's so awful, he really is. Apparently, Witchell had been asking King Charles about the yacht that they were vacationing on. And according to him, quote, I had compared it to holidays taken by a former Prince of Wales, Edward VIII, with his mistress, Wallis Simpson. And I know he really didn't like that. He was very cross. But Witchell maintains that he was right to ask the question. He said, quote, you should always be respectful and polite, but we're not there to be liked. We are there to do a job, and it is right and proper that we ask fair but searching questions. So many people think royal correspondents are in the pocket of Buckingham Palace, blowing smoke up the royal family's rear end. It did me no harm among those people to then discover that he really didn't like me at all. It's a fact. He didn't talk to me for a number of years. Later on, Witchell and the king made peace, but I still thought that was a very interesting statement he made about that royal correspondents are not necessarily there to brown nose the royal family. Because that's exactly what Harry and Meghan try to make it seem like. They're the ones who claim that Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace are always planting these negative stories about them in the media, but the fact is that's not the way it works. The royal correspondents show up to report on what they're seeing. They're not hired by the royal family. This is also something I'm pretty sure that Harry knows all too well, so him claiming otherwise is disingenuous. I also thought it was hilarious to read what Witchell said about the incident where he was reporting on the arrival of baby Archie, and something happened and he just froze in front of the camera. He couldn't speak. He said, quote, that was my worst single moment in 48 years. Drying up in front of the audience live on the telly. It was about Harry and Meghan, and maybe subconsciously I just wasn't that interested, end quote. Well, alright, it's pretty clear that even though he's trying to be diplomatic here, he's never really been a fan of the Sussexes. How could he? Thanks to his position as a royal correspondent, he really has an insider view of everything with the royal family. He sees the reality of the situation between Harry and Meghan and the rest of the royals. And even though he gives Harry some slack, I wouldn't say he's being overly kind to the two of them. At first glance, it may seem like he's supportive of the Sussexes, but when you take a closer look, not quite. Royanika also asked Witchell what he makes of Harry and Meghan's exit and the ongoing fallout nearly 4 years after they ran away from the UK to live in California. His response was, quote, I think probably it was always going to happen because he was looking for a way out, and he perceived her as being the route out from a life that, as we now discover, he had never felt entirely comfortable with. A life to which psychologically I think he was not suited. Should the palace have tried harder? Yes. In different hands, might it have handled things differently? Yes. I think by that stage the Queen was the age she was, and would have found it difficult to understand the anguish Harry was going through. End quote. So I think this is an interesting perspective. I mean, he probably is right that this was a life to which Harry psychologically was not well suited. Harry has his mental health struggles. We know that. He has made that absolutely clear. People have also speculated that Harry may suffer from some kind of learning disability or maybe ADHD. We do know that Harry reports he has been his happiest when he was serving in the military and when he was doing work in Africa. So I can understand that maybe being in front of people and having to always be on was not something that was easy for Harry. But at the same time, I think let's read between the lines here. He perceived Meghan as being the route out from a life that he had never felt entirely comfortable with. I think we need to pay attention to the word perceived here. I think Witchell was being incredibly careful with his language. Harry did see Meghan as the way out. Was she really the way out? Absolutely not. But she sure convinced him that life was going to be better for him in California. And could things have been handled differently? Well, absolutely. I mean, it didn't have to be such an absolute mess, and I'm sure the late Queen did find it difficult to understand what Harry was going through, because as far as she could see, there was nothing wrong with life as a working royal. But according to Harry and Spare, he had never really felt comfortable in the role. Now, can we believe his account in Spare? Probably not. But I do believe there is some truth to Harry's claim that he always felt uncomfortable with all the press attention. I do believe after everything that happened with his mother, that statement at least is true. Now, did Harry at the same time court the media? Absolutely. But again, Harry's behavior often doesn't make a bit of sense. But even though Witchell claims that MEGXIT could have been handled better, he still doesn't believe what Harry and Meghan said in their 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview. He makes a point of praising their team of courtiers. He says, quote, that team bent over backwards to accommodate them and to be in sympathy with her, Meghan. Not one of them was the archetypal Buckingham Palace courtier, and if anyone was going to carry it off, that team would have done so. Meghan is clearly a very intelligent, articulate, ambitious woman, and you would have thought that she would have appreciated the fact that these people were working so hard to make it work. Well, so even though he claims the palace could have tried harder for Meghan, I think really what he also wants to say is Meghan could have tried harder to make things work. This point that he's making about the courtiers who were assigned to Harry and Meghan is absolutely valid. After all, they had Samantha Cohen, an Australian who served as their private secretary. They had Americans, Jason Knopf and Sarah Latham, working as their communications secretaries. If Meghan couldn't make it work with that team, what team could she have made it work with? Well, now we know Meghan can't work with anybody, and that right there is the biggest problem. Another aspect of this whole mess that we have learned after Megxit is that Meghan never wanted to stay on as a working royal. She was in talks with Netflix way before Megxit even happened. The truth is, Meghan always wanted to head back to Hollywood. That was always her dream. She always wanted a second chance, and she figured that with a Duchess title attached to her name, she would achieve the fame and fortune in Hollywood that she'd always wanted. She believed that finally she would be a somebody. When asked why he believes things didn't work out with Meghan and Harry as working members of the royal family, Witchell's response is, quote, it was hugely complex, but I think there was a clash of cultures. I really don't think race was a significant factor in it. I think it was more nationality and culture than it was race. But I must recognize that I'm an elderly white male. Of course, that colors my outlook on the world, and it clearly is not how she or they saw things. It's a huge loss to the royal family when you think what they might have done had they been prepared to try harder and give it more time. If she had perhaps just been less impatient, less inclined to see well meaning people as being in some way against her. It's sad, particularly the relationship breakdown between Harry and William. I like this incredibly balanced view that he's sharing. He's right. I mean, race certainly was not a significant factor in it. I don't care if he is an elderly white male. Race had nothing to do with the reason Meghan failed as a working royal. Instead, it had everything to do with the fact that she wanted to be number one. She didn't want to listen to advice from other people. She was, as he says, impatient. And she always thought that there was this hidden agenda against her. She couldn't just accept things at face value. When people tried to help her, she believed that somehow they were putting her down. And I agree that it's incredibly sad to see the lack of relationship now between Harry and William. Now, Harry's at fault for going along with Meghan's little schemes, but at the same time, I do believe Meghan is more the driving force behind this estrangement. Witchell apparently also read Spare, and so he claims that after reading Spare, he does feel more sympathy for Harry. He said, quote, I hadn't fully appreciated the degree to which he was struggling with his mental health until I read Spare. But at the same time, he doesn't have so much sympathy when it comes to Harry's court battles with newspapers. He says, quote, I think they're misjudged, misguided, a touch paranoid. There is nothing to be gained from them. There is no doubt at all that he, like other members of the royal family, has been badly treated by the media on occasions. But I think they've, Harry and Meghan, been overly sensitive. They are public figures, they make use of the media, so they should be more prepared to take the knocks with the positive moments. But that's not their way. I think their focus has become so narrow and is so suffused with this sense of paranoia that they are failing to recognize the bigger picture, the opportunities that they have. They're obsessed. He is certainly obsessed with the way the media portrays him, unhealthily so. If you ask me, Witchell is hitting the nail on the head with this assessment. He's right. They are public figures, and that's something that always drives me crazy about them. They want to see their names in the headlines, but they only want to see positive stuff reported on them. Well, that's not going to work. Harry's paranoid delusions are also not reflective of reality. He and Meghan are so convinced that the media is out to get them, but that just isn't true. The royal correspondents are just journalists doing their jobs. They are reporting on the stories they come across. There is no conspiracy theory to make Meghan and Harry look bad. Witchell also holds a very favorable view of King Charles. He says, quote, I think he is perceived to be a good head of state who wants to do the right thing and has not been damaged by any of the difficulties he encountered in his private life in decades past. He goes on to say he will want to be in a bit of a hurry because he's not going to have that long on the throne. But he has shown himself to be skillful. I think the country is ready to have a slightly more proactive head of state. He is delivering speeches in a way that his mother never could have. He's almost more skillful at doing the job than his mother was because he has natural abilities. He has the strength of a performer. He's comfortable on a stage, enjoys giving speeches, and he's good at extemporizing. If anyone is able to take the institution forward and say what it is appropriate to say, he is, in a way that for all sorts of generational reasons his mother could never have done. It's an interesting perspective that he is offering on the king, and I think, many times people are too harsh on King Charles. He's perceived to be dithering over the Meghan and Harry situation, but maybe he knows exactly what he's doing. I think we're seeing that grey rocking the Sussexes is by far the best approach the royal family can take. As long as King Charles ignores all the protests coming from Montecito, Harry and Meghan don't have anything to claim they're victims of. Not surprisingly, Witchell very much approves of the job that William and Catherine are doing as Prince and Princess of Wales. He said, quote, he's fulfilling a difficult role with considerable skill, panache, and commitment, as is his wife. They are capturing public sentiment in a very positive way. I think their image is a good one. They both care very much to do it correctly and to do positive things, to find areas of relevance. Talking about their work on homelessness, the environment, and also mental health issues, he said, their commitment to the various causes that they've taken to their heart strikes a chord with the British people. Not everyone, not in all parts of the United Kingdom, but I think they are doing a difficult job as well as anyone could. Some people have been saying that this interview was too soft on Harry, but I don't know if I really agree. I think that he's taking a very balanced look at Harry and Meghan, who they are as people, and their positions within the family. He also had something to say about Omid Scobie, Meghan and Harry's cheerleader. Quote, it seems to me he has woven together a lot of unsubstantiated tittle-tattle and hearsay, spiced with snippets that can only have come directly or indirectly from the Sussexes. Classic royal nonsense. I'm sure the folks at the BBC are going to miss the good work that Witchell did for them for such a long time. And I do hope that he enjoys retirement. And you, what do you think of what this royal correspondent had to say about the royal family at large, and especially Meghan and Harry? Please let me know your opinion below in the comments section. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to like and share it with anybody else who would appreciate it too. If you've got a free moment, please help me by heading over to the King-Charles to report them for stealing content. And as always, if you enjoy our videos, don't hesitate to subscribe to get more updates. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful holiday, and I'll be back to see you in the next videos.